every year I do a end of year review. And at that time, I kind of go through the challenge we face, the blessings that we've received. I give recommendations. So far, this message has been well received by many. People have said, hey, I really appreciate you doing that. Now, this is like the third year I've done this. So if you don't like this, let me know, because all the feedback has been good, and that's why I continue to do it. If everybody says this is terrible, hey, let's do something different. I'm okay with that. But it seems like this is enough to give you some good ideas to parent well, to grandparent well, to expand your understanding of the scriptures, that kind of thing. So hopefully this is well received, and we'll tackle some of this. So let's spend some time in review of 2023. What happened in 2023? I have to go back through my email box to learn again what happened, because I tell you, a year is long. It doesn't seem like it is, but it's long. In one sense, it goes by like a flash, but in another sense, a lot has happened in 2023. So let's review a little bit what's happened. First, the challenges that we faced as a church in 2023. There's been sicknesses, a lot of them. A lot of sicknesses, and even especially toward the end of this year, people are still wrestling with sickness. They're getting over it just for the first time. They feel normal for the first time in a couple weeks. And so sicknesses have been hampering us. Apparently you need to be made of sterner stuff to live in Michigan. I don't know, because we've been really bombarded. Weather has been weird this year. An uncharacteristically mild summer, an uncharacteristically wet summer, an uncharacteristically mild winter so far. We had a brown Christmas. It was very fun to have a brown Christmas. We had some physical issues as a church. Some of our elderly have become weaker. Maybe, don't throw tomatoes at me for saying that. Maybe you're recognizing that. Slowing down a little bit. We've had tennis elbow. We've had tendonitis. We've had bad backs and sore knees. We've had knee and hip replacements. Sinus pressure, lots of things going on. We have a lot of folks that are enduring long trials right now. I mean, Kathy, ongoing battle with cancer. Lord is sustaining you. Eric's inability to get a diagnosis for why he's dizzy, why his heart's where it is. Franja Carey is very unstable on his walker. He's got a daughter living with him at this point to make sure he doesn't fall. The Wingate family in general has been through the ringer for the last couple years, really. Others of you, I can't speak about your long trial. Either it was a trial of a more private nature, or maybe one that you created for yourself, and that God has been teaching you some painful lessons through. Or maybe you didn't tell us about it. You didn't talk about your trial with us, the elders. Hey, listen, we're here to help you, to pray with you, to advise, or just cry with you. So let us know if you're in a long trial. We'd like to come alongside and do what we can. And then there are family, friends of ours that have been enduring long trials and battles with this or that. We've also had deaths of church members, family and friends. Dorothy Wynn passed away this year after several years battling dementia. The Lord called her home. Connie Bugayski grew progressively weaker and weaker this year until the Lord called her to himself. And then most recently, Linda Bowman, who was released of her long trial to enter her Sabbath rest. And still others of our relations, kith and kin, have passed on, and we remember them this year. Another challenge of 2023 is our eldership transition. We're still, as elders, figuring this out. What does it mean to be an elder? What must we do? And I tell you, there's a tension here of two extremes that we battle almost constantly. The two extremes being timidity and lording. We cannot be timid crowd pleasers, nor can we demand everybody follow us or else. Everybody recognizes that those extremes are bad, right? You understand that those are bad. Those are easy to identify and dismiss, but there's various shades in between those that we're constantly wrestling with. And so forgive us when we act too quickly. or when we don't communicate properly. We missed it. Forgive us also when we act too slowly and are slow playing the solve of a problem that's actually quite easy to figure out. You just do it. We just missed. We missed on the tension, right? We're trying to do what's best and what's wisest for you. It's a task of caring for your souls, and it's not easy. Not necessarily because of you, but just because it's not an easy job. There's many obstacles, and some of those obstacles are us. We have to get ourselves out of the way. We're just flesh and blood too. We're also operating a man down. We moved by compassion, granted one of ours an official rest from duty this year, so we're one lighter. We're hoping to receive Eric back among us as the Lord grants him strength. So many challenges this year in 2023. It's a whole page. You know, if you look at my manuscript, the whole page is challenges. It's a lot. But we also had a lot of blessings in 2023 too, and I want to talk about those, what the Lord has done. We started to experience some of the blessings of being elder-led. 3 specific areas. Number 1, church property and maintenance, and a deacon to do it. Before all this, the former deacons were tasked with both the physical aspects of the church and the spiritual aspects. And let me tell you, when both jobs are there in front of you, the property maintenance is going to take a back seat every time. When you've got spiritual problems and issues that you're dealing with, you're just not going to worry about the property maintenance. After our transition, we appointed Doug as a deacon, and we've been able to outsource many of these duties to him. And let me tell you, he has been busy this year. From basement repairs to many projects around the property, the parsonage, the mission house. If you see something that's been fixed or moved or improved, Doug probably had something to do with it, okay? Safety and security is another aspect. Eric Van Trustenberg was officially kind of put in charge of safety and security of our church. Again, another item that continued to be kicked to the background, more pressing matters at hand. And now it's been delegated to a capable and dedicated individual who's passionate about the work. Eric's put an action plan in place. He's shored up many areas of compromised safety and has set up a system of background check for volunteers. Most of this could not have been done if we did not do that eldership transition and start delegating these things to others. And so we're excited that Eric was up for the challenge and taking the reins there. And then our care ministry. Gary Montgomery has officially been put in charge of this care ministry. As an elder board with full-time jobs, most of us, we do an okay job at getting around to those who are sick and who are injured or in the hospital or whatnot. But it is still a need for the church body as a whole to be involved in the care of one another, those saints who are ill, hospitalized, shut in, or just need attention. And so Gary stepped up to organize and lead this group and making sure that those visits happen. And it's such a load off my mind sitting in my office studying for a sermon. You know, I could be visiting, I could be out there. It's covered. You know, somebody's going to pay attention to those. It's not like I don't visit, but I don't have to feel pressed all the time to get out. We received, as a church, the blessing of teaching, lots and lots of teaching this year. We began our youth community this year. A combination of Awana and a homeschool co-op kind of blended together, really. Every 2 weeks, we've been gathering together to hold one another accountable in the material. We've been using a curriculum from a group called Rooted Reservoir, a little bit more reformed in their understanding of the gospel, and currently making our way through Gospel Foundations, which is 10 building blocks of the gospel kind of study. We're continuing to iterate with it as well. Next year, we're going to start with a little bit of a different format. And so when we separate into age groups, rather than just reviewing the whole time what we looked at the last 2 weeks, we're going to review for part of the time and also then look for the next 2 weeks and kind of prepare parents and fathers for what they're going to be seeing for the next 2 weeks. We've grown pretty closely to these parents who are all in the same boat. We're all waiting for the Lord to save our kids while we teach them his word. And we can't mention youth community without the volunteers who have agreed to step in and watch our kids for like 45 minutes, which I know my kids. To watch my kids for 45, these people are saints, they're angels, okay? And they make it possible for us to pray together, share our unique challenges as parents, and just manage the crazy. And they do an excellent job. And so we thank the volunteers who come in and help. They don't have skin in the game. They don't have kids in this ministry, but just wanting to help us out. So we appreciate that. Continuing the blessing of teaching, we've come up to the end of the Northern Kingdom and foundations, and very soon we're going to be looking at Hezekiah's reign. We're going to be looking at the rest of the book of Isaiah, which should be exciting. We completed our study in James this year, and we started our study in Acts. We are 23 sermons in and almost to the end of chapter 7. We are on pace for it to take 100 sermons. Don't count on that. It's going to be more than that, but we're moving at a pretty fair beat so far. We've had 2 ladies' Bible studies this year. One finished in Exodus, and the other finished a study on the attributes of God. Senior Saints continued their study through prominent people in church history. Wednesday night Bible study and prayer group has continued to expand on the sermons from Sunday. And we also did a topical Wednesday night study called Christians Should Not Watch The Chosen, Change My Mind. And so I brought several reasons that the show should not be watched. Unfortunately, many of the people that showed up to debate, it wasn't as lively because they agreed with me, but maybe you don't and would like access to that material, and we can argue and fight in my office. We'll talk about that later maybe, but there were several more Bible studies and gatherings, most of which are just a couple or a few people that are meeting on a weekly, bi-weekly basis to study the scriptures together. But as much teaching as we've had, we also have received a blessing really to see a need for more. There's more areas that could be filled in. And Wednesday night prayer group, I'm planning to kind of do more of those topical one-off Wednesday nights. I'm ambitiously looking at maybe one a month. I mean, don't quote me on that. We'll see. But hopefully those kind of topical lessons that isn't just talking about Sunday, but even talking about something specific. I also want to bring up something called basics. It's come to my comes up several times in various ways that folks are struggling kind of with foundational truths of the Christian faith. Along with that, I've amassed several discipleship DVDs and various books on the basics of the Christian faith from various subjects, including theology and history and practical theology and counseling, creation, and more. However, many of you have not taken me up on the offer to check them out of my library. So this is what you get from that. Beginning in January, I'm going to begin officially offering what I'm calling a basics class, which is taking one of these DVDs or these books or pre-written material, and we'll study it together. This will provide a little bit of accountability to you. Somebody's going to be asking you questions on what you watched, what you saw, what you read, and then even some discussion each week. I'm not sure what the cadence of these studies are, how many there will be in the year and when they're going to be, but I'll be sure to announce that class particular study before we begin. It'll be designed like an a la carte thing, so if something comes up and you're just not interested, no big deal. Just pop out for that one. Or if it doesn't match your schedule, no big deal. Just pop out for that one. But I just want to provide something to keep the education, the training, the teaching going beyond Sunday. Another class that we can offer is choir. Late in November, we sang Christmas carols, unencumbered by the shackles of instruments. I stated at the outset for us to sing in parts if you knew how to sing in parts, and it occurred to me that this is a skill that is not taught today. Unless you go somewhere and study singing in some specific capacity, nobody teaches how to read parts in music and sing parts in music. And so I've approached a former CBC choir director by the name of Pat Wingate, who has agreed to teach a class in choir singing, which would include reading music, music parts, hearing and singing harmonies. I made it clear to her that there is no expectation of a performance. So if standing before people and singing still gets your goat, okay? That's not in the cards. It's just for the education of it all, to learn parts, to sing parts, to read parts in music, singing with many voices. So I'll be providing more details as they come available, but that will be another class that we can kind of get involved with, and you can learn maybe for the first time how to kind of see harmony in the parts that's written. Our hymns are very full of different parts of music. We enjoyed blessings with missionaries this year. Mark and Joanne Landon were here from Scotland. They were here for one Sunday, but they also were in our mission house for about a month and a half, staying there. This is their last furlough. Missionaries to Scotland, they'll officially retire after this, although they're most likely going to stay in Scotland and just live there, continuing as they have. The Stombergs were with us for one Sunday. They joined us for a barbecue upstairs and a fellowship to celebrate Dawson's graduation. He's going to Christian University in Colorado, and they're missionaries in Alaska. We've also received some blessings, some new additions this year. We've got 4 new members who have joined our church. And let me tell you, all of them are young, very young. You see, that's funny because their last name is Young. Somebody laugh. Is this on? Hello? Is it on? Okay. Yes, so 4 new members this year. Abby and Josiah are married. So a new family begun. I don't see them here. Are they here? Okay. Well, welcome to the family. Walter is here. Oh, he's out there. I think that's number 86 that they have, kids-wise. So, yeah. Chloe Dawn was born on the other side of the world this year. And a couple more babies are due early next year. So the Lord is blessing us with more additions. Our church finances held strong, even though we had several maintenance projects and large expenses, our parking lot, parsonage. Our finances held strong this year. We brought in more than we budgeted. We spent less than we budgeted, which was good. That's an example to you as a family. That's how it's supposed to be done. Bring in more than you spend. Budget less than you bring in. Okay, very, very simple, but you'd be surprised how many don't get that, so look at that. We were actually healthy enough to be able to help a couples in ministry with a large gift. We also received the blessing of seeing when things need to change. That's a blessing. We changed our foundations time to 9 a.m. and moved our services to 10:30. The results on this have been mixed. They've been mixed, okay? Our goals were to secure more attenders who have afternoon plans after the service, and we also had the goal of seeing those who were not able to make it on time at the 10 o'clock service to show up on time at the 10:30 service. With regard to attendance of foundations, it's been okay. We've gained several families, and we're thankful for those. However, there are several others who stated they would attend if the time was changed, and they haven't. Yep. You know who you are, and perhaps this little rebuke is enough for you to poke you. 9 a.m. is not that early, okay? I wake up at 5 a.m. every day, every single day. 9 a.m. is not that early. And I'm not even bragging. There are people in this congregation that wake up earlier than that. So I'm the late guy, 5 a.m. Get up, get out here. We're studying the Word of God together. That should be enough incentive for you to get out of bed. With regard to people arriving on church on time, hasn't happened. Still isn't happening. It might be a culture thing. I don't know. We're still starting at 10:30, so maybe you're missing all these announcements because you're not here yet. So I understand. I'm not going to accommodate you, though, so just work on it. Overall, we're going to probably keep the time change. It's not as definitive of a beneficial change as we might have hoped, but maybe my small rebuke will be enough to generate more improvement to that time change decision. We installed security access doors this year. Like my transition out of that awkwardness, we'll just keep clipping. Hallway cameras, we distributed RFID cards to our members of our church. This both provides a level of safety and security for the staff who work here throughout the week and our congregation who gathers here on the weekends. It also promotes the idea that this building is not a holy temple, but is a community building that we all get access to because we're part of this community. With that in mind, of course, make sure if you're planning on using the facility to fill out a facility use form, because we do like that paper trail just in case something happens to the facility or in the facility, we know who was there. We began doing our Wednesday night prayer meetings on Teams rather than on Zoom, and we're saving a ton of money doing it that way, so that's a benefit there. Jolie Van Trustenberg took over the admin assist role this year. I think it was around June. Was it June-ish? She's been such a blessing. She fills in everywhere that needs to be filled in. She's willing to take work with very little notice. I feel bad sometimes. I feel like I'm taking advantage of her, but she rolls right with the punches, and she's even got some more stuff that we're adding to her plate in 2024. So just be praying for her that she's able to adjust well and adapt to that. The church picnic this year at the park was so comfortable and so enjoyable that we're considering doing our entire service there this year. Now, that's not an official announcement yet, okay, so don't jump the gun here, but we're thinking about it. As long as we can line up all the sound and whatnot, we might be able to do that this year. We changed our constitution to reflect a more biblical understanding of the role of and duties of deacons. The Mays have moved out, closed on their first house as a married couple, and they exemplified the idea of leaving a place better than you found it. If you have not seen the inside of the parsonage since they moved in, you should take a look, because they put in a ton of work, and we thank you for that. Thank the Lord for them. After a few years of celebrating the Lord's Supper as a means of God's grace to his children and celebrating that quarterly, it became abundantly clear that having a meal to feed our bodies and fellowship with one another is ideal. It's ideal to include both those concepts together. So in addition to the catered meal in the spring that goes along with the Lord's Supper, we're also adding into our late fall Lord's Supper a harvest potluck. And so you can bring a dish in and we'll eat together after the meal. Not only that, but for the other two Lord's Suppers that occur in late winter and early fall, we'll have a time set aside after the sacrament meal to eat a meal together. The plan there is that you basically bring lunch for your family, like picnic style. You bring lunch for your family, and we sit after the sacrament and just enjoy a meal together afterwards. Those two will probably be morning into afternoon. The other two will probably be evening. But it just seems like a meal needs to go with that sacrament meal. And so we're going to make that happen this year. The elders have also decided to place 2 baptism and church membership dates on the calendar. This is not to presume on the Lord that he will fill those times. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Nor are we going to baptize somebody even if nobody volunteers. All right, who's getting dunked? It's not going to happen. They are simply dates on the calendar that start a conversation. We're hoping, parents, that this would be an opportunity, an excellent opportunity for you to start engaging your children on their spiritual status. Hey, the baptism date's coming up. Where are you at? What do you think? And you can start preparing, lacing that into their heads. And the first line of defense is you. If you don't think they're ready, great. But if they think they're ready, then they can move forward and talk with the elders and kind of go from there. And since we're elder-led and believe in a regenerated church membership, baptism, we see, goes hand in hand with church membership. Just as it doesn't make sense for somebody to be a member here, but reject the Lord's command to be baptized, we also don't see it making sense to want to be baptized here, but not submit to the covenant of the church together and yoke up. And so we're officially kind of just putting these together. When you're baptized, you're also going to become a member, and that's just how it's going to be from here on out. And so with that comes the elder's responsibility to test and try the people who are being baptized. And then Christmas always seems to sneak up on us every year. I don't know why. It's the same date every time. But by the time we have our eyes on the children's Christmas program, we never have enough time to do what we want to do. I don't know why. It just it never works out. So to mitigate this and to gain some order, we've placed a Christmas program meeting in September 2024. This hopefully will get that conversation started much earlier so we can do some bigger things for our children's Christmas program and even broaden our base of volunteers. So it's not just hanging in on 1 or 2 people, but we can gather together as a team and do this together and do something a little bit bigger. For me personally this year, I've received some personal blessings that I'd like to share with you. I again set a goal to read 24 books this year. I came so close. I read my 23rd book this week. So I couldn't squeak out another one. But hopefully, there's always next year, I guess. But I do have some recommendations for you for things to read, things to engage with. My standing recommendation that I will no doubt give every single year is always the No series. They've actually added a couple more books to that series, and so you can look for those. And the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith. If you've not read these works, you really need to soon. They are foundational to Christianity and the perspective from which we are teaching the scriptures here. And so I would highly recommend that you engage with those. Incidentally, the London Baptist Confession, both the original and the modern English, is out there, free to take, no cost. Another standing recommendation is to read the Puritans. Very few take me up on this, but more specifically, you can purchase and read John Flavel's sermons on the display of Christ and his essential and mediatory glory. It's 42 sermons about Jesus, and they're amazing. Ask Joyce. She'll tell you how amazing they are. Satisfied customer. Just saying. All right? Another Puritan work that I read this year was Ralph Benning's The Sinfulness of Sin. Listen, if you're a person who thinks that you don't sin too much, or that you only sin in small matters, I would encourage you to allow this Puritan to open your eyes to the depths of your wickedness and the need of God's grace on your heart to change you, even after receiving faith in Christ. He does a great job of just picking apart and showing the idols that we are constantly making. Another item joining the standing recommendation list is R.C. Sproul's Critical Questions booklets. They're a great way to answer difficult questions with solid biblical answers. Some of those resources you can find on the resource table. There's many more questions than we have, but I don't know how many there are in the series, but there's a lot of them. And again, if they're on that table, they are of no cost to you. Enjoy. The only cost is the time it takes to read it. So please avail yourself. I want to recommend a book called Judge Not by Todd Friel. This book, although somewhat repetitive, affirms many of the changes that have been taking place here at CBC in the last 8 years, are distancing ourselves from modern evangelical churches in America. If you're new to our church or wonder why we do what we do, this would be a good place for you to start. I also highly recommend a little book called No Quick Fix by Andrew Naselli. It is the essential layman's guide to Keswick theology, or higher life theology. The idea that a person can be saved and be a carnal Christian and then later experience some kind of higher life or second work of grace to be an even better Christian. Dr. Naselli compassionately dismantles this erroneous teaching and exposes the biblical inconsistencies of such a belief. I'm labeling this a must-read for any of you who come from a Wesleyan or Pentecostal background. I'm also labeling it a must-read for any who balk at the idea that Christ must be Lord of your life if he is to be also the Savior of your life, or that fruit is necessary for all who are truly Christians. If you hear both those statements and are like, that can't be true, read this. It will be eye-opening, I think. Speaking of Pentecostalism, there is a growing movement born out of Redding, California, and Bethel Church called NAR, or New Apostolic Reformation. It has been expanding for the last decade or so, and even Pentecostals are leery at its growing prominence. If you're somewhat familiar or not at all familiar with Bethel and the NAR, I would highly recommend you read this book called Counterfeit Kingdom by Holly Pivec and Douglas Geavitt. They give a fair and persuasive expose on the dangers of the NAR movement and why we should flee it. You might notice that we don't sing a lot of Bethel songs here. there's a reason for that. Their ministry is highly problematic. I also want to recommend a book called Bob Coughlin. Actually, if you read Counterfeit Kingdom with Worship Matters and read them together, you get the 1-2 combo. Worship perversion and how worship should be. It's kind of how both of those would go together. A service called Little Pilgrim's Theology. For $120 a year, you gain access to 12 categories of doctrinal curriculum, which is designed to engage younger children with videos, worksheets, coloring pages, and quizzes. Each week, now, if we're declared righteous before God, are we actually perfectly righteous? Are we not sinners anymore? No. Right. We're declared righteous because of Christ. To worship God today. That's what a liturgy is. Okay, very, very simple. Just because it's stuffy doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay, it's okay. In this case, there's quotes from church fathers, Puritans, reformers, key people in church history, the scripture, the songs. They're all geared to every moment holy, volumes 1 through 3 by Douglas McKelvey. It accomplishes the same thing as Gibson's work, but for everyday life. These books have small liturgies for worshiping God. In our opinion, left their first love. They're not as passionate about the gospel and the scriptures as maybe they should be. They're concerned with other matters. In that process of distancing, it can seem like we're an island, that we're the only ones doing what we're doing. For a while, but it continues to happen. And so we thank the Lord that even if there was no other church around us that were like-minded, at least we had co-laborers here. But I've discovered another group of pastors that meet in the Roseville area once a month. I've also been blessed with the discovery of 2 more hobbies this year. It's always the running joke in my home that I'm a one-trick pony when it comes to hobbies. Video games was like my only thing. Soon, now that doesn't mean I can beat you up. I probably can't. But long story short, my wife was right. Thanks. This isn't an advertisement, but if you are looking for a way for his Honda Shadow Spirit 750, that's what it is. So I've been on that every day that I can, riding the bike to church, rain, cold, it doesn't matter. I'll be on the bike. That being said, as much as I like winter, I'm beginning to like spring and summer a little bit more. So it's a little chilly out there. And then finally, personal blessing, you as a church family have been a personal blessing to me and my family. I want to thank you for countless calls, prayers, emails, Facebook messages, cards, as well as well wishes throughout the year. Thank you for the pastors and maybe where we can go in 2024. I learned the art of homily. And maybe what is homily? Sermon crafting, okay? Really big lesson I learned this year. Into the nitty-gritty of the text and understand every detail. There is finer details. I love explaining the text and helping you to see what the text means. But my friends, this year especially, I've learned that such passion is only the beginning of preaching. It's only the beginning of crafting a sermon. All believers are responsible to teach one another the scriptures. And though I still dig into the nitty-gritties every week, getting out all that I can from the text, it is not my goal to regurgitate everything that I learn right back to you every week. In fact, much of what I learn either gets discarded or it's never even written down. You might be thinking, well, unravel it for you so that that thread deserves your immediate attention. After all, what good is it to be able to identify all 1,000 threads in a verse if you leave never obeying one? leave behind forever. And this was a little bit traumatic for me because I don't know if I've told you this before, but it's always kind of been my life goal to preach through every book of the Bible by the time I die. I want to kind of cover the whole gamut of the scriptures. But I've come to a rather somber of unity and love among God's people. In observing various people in our church and in others, the need for unity itself to be all the more necessary today. I've got 3 applications to this teaching. Understand, I'm not in a book of the Bible right now. We're not looking at book, chapter, verse. But I challenge you that all of these applications really are pulled from scriptural principles. And I'd love to share with you maybe where to find those. But the first thing I observe is that arguing just to argue breeds a contemptuous and arrogant spirit. At times, I fear we commit ourselves to an exercise of futility when we gather with friends and family simply to debate the finer details of theology. It takes a rare breed to enjoy such debates. Still rarer to come out not angry or proud. Most of the time, harmless debates devolve into empty talk that profits people little in the way of discipleship. Both parties leave believing that they've won some victory, and neither of them have budged from their previous positions. It is, in a word, foolishness. It's wasted breath. It's idle words. A second application of this concept is that basing your beliefs on what you've always been taught or personal feelings rather than Scripture is a path that eventually leads to apostasy. You know, there may be times, debates and discussions that are born of genuine desire to learn and understand a position that you do not hold. But you have to enter those discussions and those debates in good faith. And what I mean by that is if you're unwilling or unable to supply solid biblical evidence for your position and base what you believe instead on what you've always been taught or what you think, then it is incredibly disingenuous to the person to whom you're speaking. You have, in effect, lied to them. You've conveyed that you're willing to learn and understand, yet you expect their evidence to have a higher degree of scrutiny than your own. If you're going to enter one of those discussions without biblical basis for what you believe, or discover that your biblical basis is a list of poorly exegeted proof texts, you either need to be ready and willing to abandon what you've always thought, or never to enter the discussion at all. Every time you say something to the effect, "The Lord let me know when I failed." And even the weeks when my time was short, the Lord blessed me to accomplish more in less time, some kind of I can tell you that God has used this time to transform me. I can tell you that he has used this time to bring warmth and depth to my sermons because I'm writing this thinking, are you up to it? Although this wasn't a true sermon, let me close with a prayer by a Puritan named Robert Parker. You keep us and preserve us. We are the workmanship of your hands, and we desire to humble both soul and body before your heavenly majesty. So here in your presence, Lord, we confess our unworthiness and trespasses we have ever committed against you, and what we have said or what we have done.